Hello YouTube. Today I am going to be discussing why this is better than this. Alright, let me take one step back. This is my personal opinion on a very specific application. So let's set up the basis of this discussion and why I am saying that. So the opinion that I want to give here today, it's based on concealed carry. This is not for home defense. This is concealed carry scenario for civilian use, not for police, not for military use, for civilian use when they are, carrying out on the street. Also, I'm not going to enter the discussion about calibers and which round is more powerful than the other. I am assuming that if a caliber is good enough for most police forces around the globe, it is good enough for personal defense. So that said, it's basically 9mm for semi-auto, which is the most popular police caliber out there, against 38 special for revolvers. Granted, you can have 38 plus P, or you can have, in this case, 357 Magnum. But again, I'm not entering that discussion. And since this is for concealed carry and looking at the availability of options out there, when I talk about semi-auto pistols, I'm going to be talking about striker fire pistols. And when I talk about revolvers, I'm going to be talking about snub-nose revolvers. Both of them great options for concealed carry. In this case, my revolver is Smith & Wesson model 60-14. So the model 60, in this case, it's one that can fire up to 357 Magnum or 38 special if you want to. And the semi-auto is Smith & Wesson M&P Shield Plus. And since this is for concealed carry and minimum size is what we want to achieve, I'm going to be referring to the magazine that holds up to 10 rounds, which is the smallest one, and that is flush against the handle of the gun. So in this case, both guns have been safety checked, no rounds, empty, and the revolver is also empty, safety checked, and all that. All right. And in this case, the revolver that I have has an exposed hammer, but that's a personal option. For purposes of this discussion, this could as well be a hammerless revolver. And there are options if you want to carry with an exposed hammer. For any reason, there are options that I will discuss in a different video for the exposed hammers. Now, let's be clear. There are, of course, disadvantages on revolvers. The first one is that they hold less ammo. This is a J-frame size revolver by Smith & Wesson, and it holds only 5 rounds. It also has more recoil than a semi-auto pistol. Now, discussing about the relative disadvantage of semi-auto pistols compared to revolvers, there are many things that I have to say. One is that if you want to carry something like this, you have two options. Either you carry one in the chamber or you don't. If you go by the option of not carrying one in the chamber, when you get into the gunfight, you have to rack the slide, right? Losing precious time, and with that gesture that's very, very evident for everyone around you, and that everyone's gonna notice. And since you are also wasting time on doing that, you are exposing yourself to being shot by the threat that you have in front of you. Now, if you decide to carry one in the chamber, there are a lot of people who feel very comfortable by doing that. But the fact of the matter is that when it comes to any guns that have been produced since World War II onwards, either a semi-auto or a revolver with a modern design. I'm not discussing cowboy action or any other crazy stuff, just modern design guns, World War II or after. There have been a number of design flaws that have made these guns fire themselves unintentionally. The first example that I can come up with during World War II was the M1 Garand in Japanese forces. So that gun fired itself. It was very cheaply made, but it fired itself when you leaned on it and when you pressed on it. And your answer to that is going to be, well, that's ancient history, and I agree. But there are also very recent cases like the PT-24-7 from 2016 that had similar flaws as well, and that fired only by, I believe that by shaking the gun. And the very renowned flaws from the P320 that was released in 2014, and that SIG claims that they fixed that issue. But around 10 days ago, I saw the news of a police officer who shot himself by carrying that gun in a stressful situation. Personally, and I have to be honest here, I don't know if that police officer pressed the trigger by mistake, or if the gun shot itself because of a design flaw. But regardless, that is actually what happened. And that brings me to another issue there. Triggers in a semi-auto pistol, if you carry with one in the chamber, are much more sensitive than in a revolver. Actually, carrying one in the chamber would look like something like this in a revolver, carrying a revolver like that. And that, we all know, it's a scary situation. With a little bit of pressure or a small mistake, you press that trigger and that hammer goes forward and shoots the gun. All safety measures and safety devices inside out of the picture here, because I know how many people are going to react to that statement, but still, carrying one in the chamber is pretty much like carrying a revolver like that. All right. Second, in a civilian defense situation, if you think that you are going to get into a gun fight that's, like a Navy SEAL or a tactical gunfight with many shots, and you're going to be acting like John Wick, you're watching too much TV. In a normal civilian situation, or a normal, for a normal person, and you can review online material on this and see what I'm talking about. A gunfight ends in one or two rounds, one or two shots, maximum 3. And that's enough to repel a threat. As soon as you fire the first shot, or probably the second if they weren't sure what happened with the first one, once you fire that, they are going to be running for dear life. And then you're not supposed to continue that attack on people who are running away from you, because that threat, it's over. You're not supposed to shoot people on the back, either legally or morally. And actually, very recently, I knew of a case of a person who I personally know who repelled an attack. He was with his son in his car, and he was attacked because they wanted the car. And he was able to repel that attack with one single bullet. He shot once and they ran away. They fled the scene in no time. Because let's face it, robbers who want something from you base their decision to engage on an attack on the availability of resources and the opportunity that they have in front of them. If the resource gets too difficult to obtain, or that opportunity gets too difficult, they will move on to the next one. They are not going to engage in a battle with you like in the movies. Well, the other aspect is concealability, especially for less casual clothes, either because of business reasons or personal reasons. Carrying a semi-auto gun that's all square, sharp edges, it's very noticeable. It's like having a brick poking out of your pocket or your shirt or whatever. Something like a snub-nose revolver, it's much more organic in shape and much easier to conceal. Actually, this gun, if you look at Smith & Wesson's website, this gun is in some aspects larger than the semi-auto, especially on its width. However, if you look at the two of them, the revolver, at least to me, it seems much smaller than the semi-auto. And however, I've tried to carry both. This is quite noticeable unless you're wearing very casual clothes. This, especially if you throw in something like this sticky holster, this is the MD5 model, and you throw it in your pocket, it looks like a large wallet and nobody's gonna notice it. Now, moving on to one not very likely, but one failure that I see with certain regularity, which is failure to ignite. In a semi-auto, if that happens, you have to typically tap on rack your slide again and load the next round, losing again precious time. In a revolver, you just press the trigger again. And now when you're in a gunfight, economy of movement is key. And I don't think that there is anything that beats the economy of movement of pressing the trigger again versus tap, rack, and load the new round. And the last point that I have is that in a situation or during an attack for civilians, chances are that attack happens at a conversation distance. If they want to take something from you, they're going to tell you, they're going to get to you, they're going to have to tell you something so you feel threatened. And that's going to happen at the conversation distance. So at that distance, two things. First, having accuracy at 25 yards or 50 yards is not going to be, it's not going to be key here. There are other things that are going to be relevant in such a situation. And at that distance also, when things escalate, they can quickly escalate to body combat distance. So if they charge you and then they get all the way to where you are, and I'm loading a snap cap here on my magazine just for illustration purposes. So let's assume that you're ready to fire with one in the chamber. In a body combat situation, if you're fighting the person and that person is on top of you and you are in a situation where you have not much space, so you have to press the gun against the person's body, this gun is out of battery. That pressure moves the slide slightly back, just slightly so, and the gun is out of battery. You're not going to be able to do anything. Whereas in a revolver, it doesn't matter how much you press against the person, you're going to fire that gun anyways. And even more, at that distance and with that pressure, that injury is going to be even more lethal than at a larger distance. So, alright, so that's what I wanted to share with all of you. Let me know if you agree or you don't in the comments. I accept all kind of comments as long as they are constructive and they come from a positive standpoint. And if you like what I just shared with you, hit that like button, it helps me a lot. And if you can subscribe to the channel, even better. Thank you everyone, and see you on the next one.